No.
Okay. What should I use?
Choose Marion County. Staging,
Okay.
of course. Oh, you're in config. Let's choose staging. So as Chris is getting logged in, she is getting logged into our staging environment. Just a reminder, we've only talked about it, but staging is will be a copy of your production environment. We do a copy about once a quarter. About every 3 months, we'll take a copy of your production environment and we'll copy it down to this lower environment that we call staging. That will be kind of your playground. That'll be your practice environment where you could go in and do testing, everything from feed testing to trying to create a record and see what it does in some cases, that kind of thing. All right, we're going to go ahead and kick off a Public Works application. Launchpad is one of the ways to create a new record. There's the big Create New Record button. That's where we're going to start. Chris is going to go ahead and maximize the intake pop-up screen. Oh, we're letting somebody in here. Christian Jensen. We have the available record types, and this is configured to your agency's choices for implementation. And I know Westland, you're already live, so we're going to go ahead and expand the Public Works module. We have these 4 record types available, so I'm going to briefly cover these. The inquiry record is exactly what it says it is. It is a bare bones record type that is not intended to issue a permit per se. It is intended to house inquiry related information, things that you can document for the record. For instance, maybe a very saleable piece of property, something that's, you know, along the highway, on a waterway, whatever, everybody wants it, nice commercial piece of property that's finally come up for sale or whatever. And everybody's coming in to ask what it will take to develop that parcel. It's an undeveloped parcel, let's say. You know, and the first time you get that inquiry, you do some staff research, you go out, you probably pull maps, you do some evaluation about what kind of infrastructure it does or doesn't have yet. You might even be able to estimate fees on what it would take or cost to bring infrastructure to that undeveloped parcel, and so on and so on. You can document that research as well as the customer's initial inquiry in the inquiry record. You can attach any type of document, including photos and images. Maps, that's the big one that a lot of people kind of, you know, like to do a lot of. You can do a fee estimate there and so on and so on. That record is then retained. You know, historically, you created it, you did the research, you documented everything that you did, kind of thing, you know, what it would take. And then the next person comes in tomorrow afternoon and asks about the same commercial property that's for sale. You can now refer back to that inquiry record that you already created, already did all of the research on, already attached all of the details and maybe information that you uncovered onto, you know, and that kind of thing. So it in a sense, it allows you to create a bit of a database of information and not have to do a lot of repeat work. So it can be extremely beneficial if you use it in that way. So there's just that. The investigation record is specifically for public works development work being done without permits or without the required approval. The investigation record is, you know, potentially somebody complained or somebody's out, or somebody from your office or the building department and whatnot is out in the field, and they see some work going on a property that they're like, you know, I don't see any permits, or you know, they know there's no permits, or they came back in the office and checked and there's no permits or applications and that kind of thing. You can create an investigation record to simply document your investigation, whether they were or weren't doing work without permits. The investigation record is in place for you to document that investigation, more or less. Once you make a decision and maybe you refer them to get required permits, the investigation is now closed, and the customer ideally they're following your direction, would come into the office and purchase a public works application, or, or initiate a public works application for a permit. The project record, when we developed the Public Works module, we did it with 5 agencies, I believe 3 cities, 2 counties. And we learned from those folks that a lot of times public works development is project oriented or project centric, right? And so in this way, you can create a project record. This record is just an administrative only record. It doesn't issue or anything like that. Doesn't become a permit. It's kind of an umbrella record that allows you to document all of the project details, any project accounting that's been assigned to it, project numbers, attaching any high-level project documentation. Maybe it had to be something that city council or your board of commissioners had to pass. Maybe it's I don't know, something you get through a tax levy, whatever the case might be. You can attach various documentation to the project that's about the project to the project record. You can even attach the people, like the project manager of the project, contact people for the project, who your contact is down in finance, blah, 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 whatever. Then when actual applications start coming in related to the project, those would be Public Works tracking records. Tracking is AKA Public Works permit. I'll tell you in a minute why we had to call it tracking. And as they're applying for permits and putting in applications related to that project, you can relate them, you can associate them, in other words, to the project record. So you can then, as time goes by, look at the project record. From the project record, you could go to a tab called Related Records, and you can see all of the Public Works permits that roll up to that project. It's an excellent way to manage larger public works scale projects. Tracking is the actual permit record. So we're going to go ahead and kick off a permit application. Oh, I said I'd say why it was called tracking. It's called tracking because when we originally decided, so our original scope clearly for e-permitting, we are paid by the state surcharge. We receive 4% of the 12% surcharge. That's what funds the e-permitting program ultimately. And so clearly the original scope was the building module because state surcharge comes from building permits. And as we grew and developed over many, many years, the model started in 2008. As we grew over many years, it was determined that a lot of our agencies really needed more of a wraparound solution. And so for the entire community development process. So planning came first, code enforcement came second, and then public works came last. Oh, we also have on-site for counties, septic. And so in our Acela contract, originally, when all of these added modules kind of became an idea, it would have been a breach of our contract for us to create or to build out all of the individual record types for these modules because Acela also provides that service. So we would have been, to some degree, in direct competition with Acela. So we couldn't do that. So originally, that's why these records were called tracking records and why they weren't built out, meaning why they weren't called like Public Works permit, Public Works right of way, Public Works erosion sediment control, why there's not individual record types for all of the service areas in Public Works. Now, however, the nature of our contract with Acela over all these years has changed dramatically, and we can build out more specific record types in these alternate modules. So there is a Public Works right-of-way record type soon to come. It's been approved and it is in very early development at this point. So there's kind of a little bit of extra on that note, but let's go ahead and get focused on our training today so that we can make the most of our time. At the top of the screen, Chris is reminding me, remember the double-headed arrow on the intake forms. It will expand the fields to kind of fit whatever your screen size is as much as it can. No lie though, Acela's not great at this yet. This last version last summer, June of 22, was the first version where they developed to different screen sizes. And so they're still a little premature in that effort, but it's better. That little button helps a lot. Okay, so on a Public Works record, because it is indeed called a tracking record, it is not specific to the service area, meaning it's not specific that it's right of way or that it's new construction, driveway, sidewalk, curb cut, or that it's erosion or sediment control, etc. In the project name field, while not required, no red star. That's what makes a field required, a red star. While no red star, we highly recommend in the Public Works planning modules that you indicate the application type in the project name. This will make things a lot easier for you to see and find at a bird's eye view in the record list, without having to actually open and dig into the record to see what specific kind of application it actually is. So we're going to go ahead and create a right-of-way application today. In the description of work, that's kind of obvious. That's your scope of work. We're going to say right-of-way for street construction, replacement of water main. Thank you, Krista. Just example, MAIN. I put her on the spot. She said she hates having to spell and type in front of everybody. Okay, description of work required, note the red star. And clear, that can be, by the way, thousands of characters, but don't do that. When you go to generate the report, you would get some ungodly version of the report if you tried to paste in thousands of characters there, but that is quite a lengthy field. Make sure that you're not putting in things that would be internal information. I do go back and as we're supporting 80 plus agencies these days, many more to come. We see a lot of kooky things get put in here like, Jessica, once you're done, pass it to Trisha. And it's like, what? Why is that? Don't put that in the description of work. The description of work is what shows online. By the way, every part of this record, except for one thing, shows online. And I'll be touching on that as I train throughout the session. Once the record is created over the counter by the agency, the customer, the applicant, the owner, whomever is attached to the record, frankly, anybody really, can browse to this record online through the e-permitting website, and they can track its entire progress from beginning to end. They can upload documents online and they can make payment online. They just can't apply online yet. And the reason for that might be disappointing for a few of you. Although we find that we're about 60-40 split for agencies. About 60% of Public Works engineering departments are relieved that we don't offer online application because they don't want it. And about 40% are disappointed because they do want it. The reason we don't yet offer it, and I say yet because it will come, and it will be an option. It'll be a switch. You'll either say yes, you want it, no, you don't. But once it comes, the reason it isn't here yet is that the online application model that Acela provides out of the box is address-based, and Public Works and planning are not address-based. They are parcel-based. And that's because a lot of planning and Public Works applications are made on undeveloped parcels. Only buildings get addresses. So in that way, the Public Works and planning applications are parcel based or parcel required. You can see the parcel is the first property element that's here on my intake form. It's required. and then address. By the way, just noting, I didn't mention it, maybe as a reminder here, notice the blue-gray banner, pay close attention to those as a new user. Those will guide you as to what sections are required and what sections are not required. So notice in the blue-gray banner for parcel, this section is required, but for address towards the bottom of the screen, this section is not required. Now, could you add an address? Absolutely. It's just not minimally required in order to create a new application. So I want to make that distinction clear there. So we need to enter a parcel number. And I imagine Krista's grabbing a parcel number somewhere. We need to cheat in Marion County here. We don't know their parcel numbers by heart. So we got to cheat here real quick and go to some of their existing data and copy one. Of course, the record list is going to take a few to load since it's the first of the day. Just a note, because it's happening here, first thing in the day when you log into Accela, you're either using the record list page as your starting point or the My Task page as your starting point, and both will take quite some time to load at the very top of the day or the first time that you open them upon login, because they contain a significant amount of information. So the system has to load a fresh copy of that page or cache a copy of that page, and it takes a few. You might want to X out, Krista, and start and open it again. I found that sometimes to do the trick. Oh, there you go. You could do like a 5. Nope. A 3. A 0. A 0 is always a good one. 1 0. 2 1 0. Ta-da! Okay. Sure. ODFW. Let's do that. Super simply, no worries about what we're doing. Just as we're training on this, we needed to grab a valid parcel number. So before Krista hits search, let's talk about this. Just a reminder on the training, a refresher of sorts. When you are creating a new record in Accela, particularly around any of what we call the reference data, which is all of your property data, address, parcels, owners, and any licensing information, that's what we call LPs, licensed professionals, AKA contractors. Although they're not all contractors, other licensed professionals live in our licensing data, like licensed engineers, licensed architects, landscape contractors, and we're now looking at landscape architects and land surveyors, as well as many, many others. So just a note on that. And we create, just a reminder, remember, you send us your property data when you implement with the software with us, and we load it for you. That's called your APO, address parcel owner information. That's all your property information, usually from your tax assessor, from GIS, and now, you know, your GIS system, etc. You compile APO data, we load it for you. And then with some level of frequency, you send us regular updates to keep it current so that it doesn't get stale, right? Property sells all the time, which means owners are changing with frequency. Investment owners, homeowners, yada, yada. And then not only that is generally new, hopefully, construction is happening. And new structures get addressed, new homes get addressed, new addresses come into play, and that kind of thing. So that all lives essentially kind of in a library of information, if you can recall, that we call reference data. We load it for you, and it's kind of sitting there like a library with a bunch of bookshelves full of all of that data. And then we load, e-permitting loads all of the licensed professional data for you, either nightly for some license types or about every month or so for other license types. And so that library of information, the books that sit on those bookshelves, are being kept current by us, by e-permitting. So when you're creating a new application, just the reminder here is that you have to search. I can't just free type in a parcel number and move forward with the application. There is a search button there for a reason. I have to search for that parcel number in the reference library, so to speak. I have to look to see if it already exists in our property data for the agency. If it doesn't, I cannot create an application using that parcel number. At that point, I either have to do some research to see if it is the correct parcel number, you know, through the tax assessor database website or your GIS system or whatever your reference, you know, or resources might be. But you want to validate that parcel one way or the other. We all know that applicants give bad information sometimes, or they transpose numbers, or they forget the space. For instance, in Marion County, their parcel number format, direct from their tax assessors, you can clearly see includes a deliberate space. That space counts. If I were to enter that parcel number minus the space, I would not get a match. So it is important also that you make yourself familiar with the parcel format of the parcel data that's been provided to you, whether that's from your GIS folks or from your tax assessor, etc. Get familiar with that format, whether it has lettering. You know, there's a lot of agencies that have or include lettering in their parcel numbers. Some of them drop the leading 0 for some mysterious reason. We've got all kinds of different parcel number formats. I mean, probably as many as we have agencies participating, to tell you the truth. So get familiar with that format because it will be paramount to your successful searching and finding a match, right? Okay. So we have 2 instances of this parcel for whatever reason in Marion County. We're going to check box one of them and select it. And it's going to give us the corresponding address. There is none. And it's going to give us the owner. There's no address because very likely, this is an undeveloped parcel then. And there is an owner. Every parcel has an owner. Every piece of property is owned. So we're going to check box. It's the same owner. Check box and select. So by doing that, the system dropped in the parcel number right at the top of the screen that we selected. We do not have an address because that parcel is clearly undeveloped. There was no address attached to it. And then it dropped in the owner. All right, so as we move on, we're going to, an applicant is required. You can see that section is required in the blue-gray banner there. We have some quick buttons as a reminder. I can say I want the applicant to be the owner or the applicant to be the licensed professional, but pause for a minute. We haven't filled in a licensed professional yet. So if the applicant is the licensed professional, I would scroll down a section or two to the licensed professional section, fill that in first, and then scroll back up and use the quick button. It's still a great time savings because otherwise then you have to search for your applicant. You have to type it in here and then go down and search it again down below. So you can save yourself time by just skipping ahead slightly if the licensed professional is acting as the applicant. Keeping in mind, licensed professionals are licensed contractors, electrical, plumbing, structural, CCB. All of the BCD professional licenses are the electrical and plumbing licenses. We do see a lot of plumbing excavator for erosion and sediment control permits with Public Works, also for right-of-way. So, and keep in mind, architects, engineers, landscape contractors, and so on. There are a lot of different kinds of licensed professionals, and a lot of times those people wear 2 hats. They're the applicant and the licensed professional. So in this case, we're going to go ahead. I can also free type it in. So just a note on that. I can free type in the applicant information. There's no reference for applicant information. I am going to use, like Krista did, the as owner button. Make sure that you get in that required phone number. Everybody misses that. Then they go to submit the application and it errors out because they're missing that one required phone number field. Email. It's not required, no red star, but collect it. I say that the same way every training I do every single day and week, because there's tons of email functionality to benefit you in the system. So where you collect email, you'll have a lot of added efficiency. Krista put her email in there so we can do some, some demonstration kind of things as we go. I have the option for an agent for applicant. Notice that section is not required. However, I could attach any other people associated with the project, a project manager, a lead, just your primary contact other than the applicant, so on, so on. We're going to skip through that. Notice the professional section in Public Works and Planning is not required. It is in building, but it is not in Public Works and Planning. Let me clarify quickly, just for those of you, obviously for building. I said it isn't, and it is required in building. It is not required at intake in building, but it is required to be on the record by issuance. So just a clarification there. All right, professionals, not required at all in Public Works and Planning, not at intake or at issuance. So just note, however, if a licensed professional is participating in the project in any way, generally doing the work typically, that you would need to add the licensed professional as party to the project. We're going to go ahead and just add, let's go ahead and just add a quick CCB. We're going to select CCB. And in the business name field, we're going to do a %, construction %. % remembers the wild card in Acela. And so for successful searching, remember I said licensed professionals is also kind of reference library kind of information. And so you have to search for a match. And the reason we do that for property data and for license data, just so you know, is to validate it for you. Otherwise, you're just garbage in, garbage out. You're just putting in addresses as best as the contractor told you that was a good address, even though it wasn't. And, and you're creating repeat or duplicate after duplicate after duplicate of the same wrong address, and so on and so on. So the reason these two pieces of information in particular have to be searched and matched is to validate. So we're going to go ahead and search for a CCB where the business name includes construction. She just had to put a small part of it in there. Clearly, we're going to get hundreds of matches. I know it says 1 through 10 of 100, but there will be hundreds probably if we were to really dig in. A lot of contracting companies have the word construction in their business name. The percents are the wild card. So what that says is anything can come before the word construction and anything can come after the word construction. But I want the business name to include CONSTR. And I got a lot. So we're just going to make sure we're going to grab one of these. Please make sure that, it's valid. Krista doesn't have the window stretched out, but there we go. The license expiry date should not be expired, like that 2012 guy, the third one down. I wouldn't want to be picking that. If I did pick it, it would error out and tell me I can't add an expired license to a record. The system only does that check at intake. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just grab somebody just for demonstration. So we added J Winters Construction to our project. And now we're at the Public Works General Information section of the application. Very short and sweet. I'll explain to you why it's very short and sweet. Again, when we developed that module with the 5 agencies that participated in our development project, we heard overwhelmingly that not a lot of information is often always known or able or had at intake, that a lot of the information on public works projects oftentimes kind of develops over time or is provided over time. Now, for some things that might be very, very true, some kinds of projects, but for other projects that might not necessarily be true. I want to let you know there's a lot of other application related information post intake that you can collect. A lot. But we did minimize the intake process so that you could at least kick off an application and get things started with the bare minimum. So at the top of this section, you see there are 3 check boxes on the left side there: right of way, erosion sediment control, and driveway, sidewalk, curb cut. We call these service areas. And by the way, this module is intended to serve public works development. And I say that kind of loosely because I have learned over my 9 years with e-permitting as a project manager and trainer that a lot of, I truly do not know the fine line distinctions between public works and engineering. And I hear a lot of differences in how people name themselves in public works engineering and what services they cover or provide under that name. So just so you know, originally these were part of the public works development side of the house. In other words, Acela doesn't do utility billing. That often is under public works, right? Or engineering. And the system is not at all designed to do that. So this is the permitting side of development services, so to speak. And that includes these 3 service areas to date. We are on the verge of adding a 4th and new service area. But so far you can permit for all things around these 3 service areas. So right of way, erosion sediment control, also known as site development, for some folks. And then driveway, sidewalk, curb cut, that could be around existing construction or new construction. Any of these could be new construction or existing structures. So there's no kind of inference that this has to be new or existing. Except that we do offer you optionally the type of work drop down just kind of to the right corner there. Can you hit that, Krista? Type of work. There we go. We do offer you the type of work drop down if you want, or if it makes sense, or if it's more meaningful to attach some sort of type of work to the project as well. New or alteration, that kind of thing. All right, a service area, at least one service area, and it says at the top there, please select at least one service. At least one service area has to be checked to start an application. However, all 3 can be checked, or 2, or whatever combination of the 3 are applicable to the kind of application that you are taking in, what you are going to permit for. So in this case, we said we were applying for right of way. We'll leave it simple at right of way. However, if you decide to have an application type for new construction, like new, let's say new residential construction, new dwelling construction. In that case, if the application type was like a new dwelling construction application type, all 3 of those would likely be checked. New dwelling construction is probably going to implicate all 3 of those. Private or public is an option, not required, but optional. A type of structure, if a type of structure is party to the project, you can record that, also optional, no red stars there. And then just below that, separate accessory building, if you're, if you're recording kind of the structures, you can record that as well. And then the application type, that's the only red star right here, really. Application type is a completely 100% custom list. You will provide us with all of the values for this dropdown. These are Marion counties, and I kind of want to talk through them a little bit because Marion County is our largest user of the Public Works module of all of our participating agencies. They're the most involved user for this module. They're using it to the hilt. All the little parts and pieces, they're using all of it. So they have 1,200 CN stormwater drainage. In fact, Marion County is the agency that requested the enhancement for the 4th service area that's soon to come. And I believe that it's like stormwater related. It's somehow utility related, and forgive me, it seemed rather complex. I just am starting to collect information on it, so I don't have all the details yet. But as a participating agency with the Public Works module, you will most definitely receive all the informational notifications and whatnot about how that comes together. They have an access permit. That's going to be a driveway. An annual permit. So a combination permit. A combination permit for Marion County, if I remember, is like new construction related, where it includes a combination of the 3 service areas. Construction erosion and sediment control acknowledgement. Marion County uses a product or allows the use of a dust control product specifically in their jurisdiction, and I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong, called Lignon or Lignon, I think is how it's spelled. And so there are some acknowledgement kind of agreement forms when you use that chemical or that agent for dust control. Erosion prevention, sediment control directly, an event permit, street closures, right away, that kind of stuff. Large development, erosion prevention and sediment. Major construction, if I remember right, also might include all 3 service areas. On-site stormwater drainage, right of way. They decided to break down the different kinds of right of way. And for those of you who are going to also permit for right of way using your Public Works module, I would recommend this. This turned out to be a really smart move because they can very easily quantify these separately because they broke them out rather than just generically calling it right of way. And every flavor of right of way goes under just that generic right of way. Now they can actually kind of quantify these separately. Right of way sidewalk, right of way tree cutting, right of way utility private, and utility public. Removal agreement, road closure, sewer, system development charges. They are one of the agencies that system development charges come out of Public Works, and they charge their system development charges on the Public Works side for new construction and changes in construction, additions and that kind of thing. And then work in the right of way, general. We, I believe in the attachments, we provided some documentation that includes sample application type values from a lot of different agencies as kind of brain food for thought for you, as each of your 3 agencies, or 4, because Marina's on, is deciding what application types you want specifically for your agency. I would invite you to think about this, to consider this carefully, because right now a lot of people go, oh yeah, we have 4 application types, like literally paper application types. You know, they're thinking about it like that. But if you could really break it down to a more specific application type in this way, because you can customize this to those things that you need to quantify and count, or you would have loved all these years to have broken out right away into 4 or 5 different types like that, or this kind of, idea. Take the opportunity to do that now. This list, by the way, is editable post go live. So should you have forgotten something, should you decide a year later that you want to add something new, we can do all of that. It's not like you have to decide now and you're locked into it for 100 years. We do need a list to start with, however. Type of project, that is an optional drop-down field, it's optional to be filled in, but it is not customizable. So you have construction, improvement, and other. And then a type of work is optional, but also not customizable. It's model, meaning we don't change these values through submittal form. We're going to go ahead and just say, I don't know. Sure, we'll say repair. And then detailed purpose, scope of project. Now this throws everybody off because it's required. And they're like, wait a minute, at the top of the form, didn't I fill out a description? And you did. We said right of way for street construction, replacement of water main. You can copy and paste that if that's just the easiest way to make that happen. However, I can tell you that this is meant to be a detailed project purpose or description. So it would be something like replacement of water main with new PEX. You know, I'm just making some up, like with new PEX piping, 1,242 lineal foot. You know, it's more, it was intended originally to be the more detailed piece. What are the, exactly what, across 3 block faces, or, for however distance, or on, the 3,000 block, or whatever it is, right? So it would be something more like that. Does it have to be that? No, it doesn't. So it can be whatever you want it to be, including simply a copy and paste. So no worries, Krista. We won't watch. Okay, so she's filling a detailed description there. I do want to let you know, in Public Works, you can track your time, because a lot of the work, like we mentioned at the top of the meeting, is project centric or project oriented. In Public Works, you have the option of tracking your time. So notice time tracking right there. So I can add a row, and I would, okay. Oh yeah, okay. So I put in my time, like 0.25. Krista spent 15 minutes, let's say, creating this new application. It automatically drops in the date and the user from the logged in user and today's date, and you pick the activity. Well, it's administrative. She's creating an application. She can put the project account. She can reference it here, like project for, whatever, yeah. And then in notes, it would be application or app or whatever you wanted to put. This is totally up to you on whether you want to use this or not. Obviously it's available to you right here at intake, but it's available to you for the life of the record. There is time tracking available to you for everybody involved in the processing of that application to record their time. Everything from the plan review, inspections, any of it. If it's billable to a project account, then you have the, forgive me, you have the functionality and the opportunity to track your time. Okay. Floodplain. If on this application, this parcel is in the floodplain, you can add a row and record the floodplain detail. There are a lot of fields there that you can fill in. We're actually not going to fill them in for this demonstration, but there's benchmark elevation, description, if there's fill, flood fringe, floodway, improvement to existing structure, new construction, other residential. The special flood hazard area, I believe, comes directly from National Floodplain, so that drop down is from National Floodplain. Does it have step backwater analysis required, and so on. If you need to record as an agency floodplain data for your floodplain management program, for floodplain permitting, or for floodplain just data and reporting, you have the opportunity or the option to fill that in. The floodplain is available to you here at intake, but it's also available to you post intake. So if you don't know that information right now, immediately at intake with the customer standing in front of you, then sure, you can look on the floodplain map or whatever and fill that in later if you need it. It does not have to be filled in, but you can only report on the things that you put into the system. We can only get data out of the system for you for the things that you put in. We have a lot of agencies that are like, oh, Kelly, I ran this public works report that e-permitting offers, and it's like blank. It's got a lot of blanks in it. And so they think the report's broken. I go and I look at their records and I'm like, you're not filling in any of the information. The report can't report on things that aren't being provided. And because a good majority of public works and planning, just since I'm talking about it, are optional information depending on what they're applying for, depending on the scope of work, we have to make these 2 modules flexible enough to kind of meet the majority of your permitting needs. And the only way we can do that is to not require things. Because if I required every single thing on the form, well, they're not doing erosion and sediment control. They're not doing a sidewalk. But if I required all of that, you wouldn't, I mean, what would you put if it was just a basic right-of-way application, you know? So we do have to keep things optional. And in that way, sometimes very little information is entered by agencies, and therefore very little information is available for you to get out in reporting. So just keep that kind of tuck that in the back of your mind. We're going to go ahead and submit our application. Oh, by the way, the very bottom one, I can attach documents to the application, electronic documents, but I can also attach documents for the life of the record post intake. So submit. So submit is going to create our Public Works application, and then we're going to go into our application and we're going to dig into the details. By the way, so every time you create a new application in Acela, it brings up the available inspections for that type of application. Well, in Public Works, the application is for kind of everything. So Public Works has the largest availability of inspection types. You have quite an extensive offering of inspection types. And that's because we had to provide you with all the different kinds of inspections that might wrap around those service areas, right? And because we don't know what the application type might be, we had to just include just a pretty extensive offering of inspection types. You can elect to append inspections onto the record. Remember that pending inspections is just a suggestion to the applicant. It will print on their permit that you have suggested that inspection be scheduled at some point in time, but it doesn't make it so, right? So you can suggest it all day long, but it doesn't mean that they're going to actually schedule it as you have suggested it. And then the downside of pending inspections, even though making those suggestions can be very beneficial or help guide your applicant, the downside of pending is that if you pen too many and the customer ultimately never schedules them, at the end of the project, you will be stuck cleaning those up because you can't find, well, in Public Works, it's a little bit more forgiving than in building for sure. So those of you with building modules note that in building, you'd absolutely have to clean all of those up before you could final the project and provide C of O, or before you could just provide final completion, right? But building's a lot more prescriptive. Public Works and planning are a little bit more forgiving in this way, but it will still look for any pending inspections at final inspection, which is the 9995 final PW. It's not the final right away. It's not the final sewer. It's not the final sidewalk. It's not the final driveway, because trust me, those are all up there in that list. Only the 9995 final PW actually closes the record. The other final inspections are provided to you to record the final specific to the service area or specific to the scope of work. However, you have to actually include 9995 final PW to close the record out. That's the final, if you want to call it that. 9995 is the key. And once 9995 is signed off with a positive status result, meaning approved, that's a technical way to say, once it's approved, the record will automatically close. So there's benefit also to making sure that you have 9995 on the record and ultimately signed off. But those other finals are very important, right? If the scope of work for this project, for instance, includes all 3 service areas because it's a new single family dwelling construction, You might want to sign off some of the other finals along the way as the project is moving through construction. Final sidewalks in here, final driveways in here, there's final pavement, you know, there's a lot of finals in this final driveway, there it is. Final approach, you see, you get the idea here. So if the scope of project is more inclusive, you might want to include some of those other, I call them sub-finals, because if you were to approve the final right away inspection on this record, ultimately, you know, down the road, it's not going to automatically close the record. Only 9995 will close the record. So you always have to have 9995 on the record at the end of the day. These other sub-finals, though, I mean, if I'm moving through a new dwelling construction, sure, I probably want to final the approach. And then when the driveway actually gets poured and done and meets requirements, then I'll final the driveway. And then, you know, as as construction progresses, those finals are helpful to to document the finished pieces of the project in progress. Do you have to use them? Absolutely not. You can use 9995 and call it a day if you want. I would invite you to please explore the Public Works inspection list. Again, it is quite diverse. And again, the biggest offering of inspections, the largest inspection group we offer in the entire Oregon model. So I would imagine everything you need is there. We're going to go ahead and cancel. We're not going to append any inspections on here. Trying to think, can we auto pen the final in Public Works now? I can't remember.
I think we can, but I would have to double check.
Yeah, we might be able to configure to automatically, upon creating a new record, we might be able to configure to add the final 9995 PW inspection to every new record that's created. The reason that can be extremely helpful and beneficial, one, it just saves you time. Two is it doesn't allow a record to close prematurely without minimally getting that final inspection. There is a submittal related to inspection scheduling, so I just want to bring your attention to that. You have the option of allowing or disallowing your applicants from scheduling their own inspections. I would invite you to consider that carefully. It could be you guys know your business better than anybody else, and depending on how your inspection scheduling works, if you do field inspections, depending on how it works, it could be to your great benefit to allow the customer to spend their time scheduling the inspections rather than wasting your time scheduling it for them. However, if your process doesn't really align with the customer scheduling, then you have that option. There's a submittal for that accordingly. We do set up your inspection calendars. So for instance, if you only do Public Works field inspections on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we can restrict your Public Works inspection calendar to only be available for scheduling on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we can manage your inspection calendars to restrict the number of days or which days. It just has to be something consistent, and it has to be incidentally across all application types. So if you do right-of-way inspections only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but you do driveways on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we cannot get to that level of detail. In other words, that just tells us you do inspections of some form or another 5 days a week. We can't get down to the record type or to the service area. Not at this time. Okay, so our sample record is the very top record in the record list. So Krista went to Launchpad, opened the record list, and there's our record at the top. It is the first record of the year. 2023 that's been created. So notice the record number, the record sequence here. The 555 is a unique identifier for Marion County specifically. Each of your 3 agencies has a unique 3-digit identifier as well. The 23 is a year band. And the 6 digits is a sequence generator that starts over at 1 every calendar year. So every year, 23, the year band will flip to 23, and the very first record that somebody creates of the calendar year will be record number 1, and so on. Next record will be 2 and 3 and blah, blah, blah. You can see in Marion County, at least the last copy we did, which I thought I remembered was sometime in October, there were up at around 1,346 applications. You can see that because the record number just below our record number is 001346. That sequence generator is sequential for the most part, and I won't get into why I say for the most part, but it's sequential. And so generally that gives you a rough ballpark figure of maybe how many records you've created in the calendar year. Now, this again was a copy back in October, so this is short about 3 months worth of data for Salem, or for Marion County, excuse me. So we're going to go ahead and click to open our Public Works record. I'm not going to talk about all of the things we've already kind of trained on as new agencies, you know, regarding the light gray panel or the different tabs of the records. I'll at least touch on the bare necessities here. Each of those represents a tab that contains information about your record. The top row is the header row there of information, is kind of the high level important details about your record. From the left, the right of way, the ROW was the project name that Krista entered. Then the right of way, street construction, was the description of work she entered. Notice there's a pencil to edit that. It just drops you directly into the description of work tab where that information lives. And I can see there's the project name and there's the description of work. If I needed to edit, append, delete, whatever, I could do so and save my changes. Status, the status of the record last and the status of the record now and who changed it. Location is all of the property details. So you could see the parcel number and the owner. There was no address. That's why it says none provided for the top item. By the way, there is a bug in this header row for address. The bug is that if the address includes unit numbers of any type, apartment number, space number, suite number, whatever you call it, it unfortunately it does not display the unit number in the header row. We've turned in a bug fix ticket to Acela to fix that. And I know it's in queue. So just a note on that. If you are, you know, as you get really moving and using these modules, once you go live, if there is an address associated to the parcel and it has a unit number included, you won't see the unit number displayed in that header row up and until Acela gets that bug fixed. It's kind of silly. I just think they forgot to include that field. In the contact, that is your applicant and the other contact folks, and it includes the primary phone, the email, whatever you entered for your applicant or record. And then workflow. We've already trained extensively on workflow, but just a quick high level workflow is the life cycle of the record from beginning to end, whatever that constitutes, whatever beginning is, whatever end is. From building to public works to planning, beginning and end are defined differently. For planning, beginning is deeming something complete. Kind of the end is decision and report, or even maybe an appeal. In public works and building, they are exactly the same. Just so you know, the workflow for public works and building is literally copied. It's exactly the same, except for the plan review groups are named differently. Obviously, the work groups that participate in public works planning are different people than the work groups that participate in building planning. So beginning and end in public works, beginning is intake or application intake, end is final. So intake, plan review, issuance, inspection, and final. That is kind of the high level bird's eye view of the life cycle of a public works application or permit. And so included in, and by the way, workflow is just the high level required tasks. It is not every little nth thing that you have to do. Like you have to maybe email a form over to the water master, or you have to reach out to your power and light agency. No, none of those kinds of little administrative requirements or pieces that happen in and amongst the workflow are indicated in workflow. You would indicate and record those separately in a tab called activities. However, workflow is the high level required tasks. So let's kind of dig in here. I am going to only cover those things now that we've created our application. I'm only going to cover those things that are unique to Public Works. So the numbered tabs, that's where we'll start. There's an 01, 02, 03, and 04 tab, notice. Those are unique to Public Works. We're going to hit the 01. We're going to click that tab and open it. The 01 tab is a repeat of our intake form. You can kind of see that. You can recognize that for the whole top half. So we have the service areas we had selected right away. So of course, if I needed to make any changes or edits, I could do so. I could fill in any of the other fields maybe I didn't know at intake, like maybe I didn't know that it's public when I at intake, so now I can check that. I can put a type of structure, I could did it, you know, I can edit anything else, right? I can change type of work or the type of project and so on. I can edit my detailed project purpose because maybe now I know that it's not 12,042 square feet, it's 13,500. You don't have to, Krista, but you can make your edits or additions. Like maybe you didn't even know that it was going to be PEX piping yet, and you didn't know the lineal footage or whatever. You can add that now. Oh, looks like Nikki got kicked out of the meeting, maybe. Okay, let her back in. Okay, and then also below the detailed project purpose, now notice there's a lot of other things you can record that weren't asked or provided to you at intake. So we'll start from the top here. Structure information. So if there is a structure involved or important to this project, you can record the structure information, the total square footage of it, the number of stories, the height, bathrooms, bedrooms, occupancy load, and lot size. And then if there's a soils report required for that particular structure or lot. I can record site information. Is there engineered fill? If, you know, fill volume by cubic yards, impervious surface area. Is it flood hazard area? Is it landslide hazard? Is it have a retaining wall? Those all kind of, you know, start moving you towards erosion control and things like that, right? For Public Works, a little more detail here. I can record that project number. So if in fact this does roll up to a project, a capital improvement or, you know, street improvement bond or, you know, whatever, you can record the project number. I can record storm sewer if you can hit that drop down, Krista. These are not customizable. Just so you know, as I move through these numbered tabs, I will tell you the things that are customizable. Otherwise, assume that they are not. They are model, which means the same values are provided to all 80 participating agencies. So storm sewer, if it's culvert, curb, drywall, gutter, storm sewer, type of sidewalk, we have drop downs for that. If it's curbside or setback, street improvements, AC map, fully improved, gravel, partially improved, street improvements. And then if there's any planning information that is important to your process at all, any of the setback details. And then at the very bottom is something called a record link. This is new, a newer enhancement or feature. This link, you can copy and paste this link and include it in any sort of external communication to the applicant. This is a link directly to their record online. So if at any point in time, say for instance, you're exchanging some emails with them, you can copy and paste this record link into an email and it will provide them with a direct link to their application for tracking online. So just so you know, that's here and available to you to share or use. All right, so we had our intake information plus more. Now, let's go. Thank you, Krista. Go back up. Oh, yeah, save changes. By the way, don't forget that. I'm famous for that. Those 3 service areas. So the other numbered tabs, 2, 3, and 4, coincide with the service area checkboxes, notice. Tab 3 is right of way, 2 is sidewalk curb cut driveway, and 4 is erosion sediment control. The system is designed, this is the key emphasis here. The system is designed that whatever checkbox service area you checked in the O1 tab, that you are going to fill in some corresponding information on the numbered tab that corresponds to that checkbox. So, simpler. If I checked right away, it's going to expect me to put in some right away information. If I check driveway, sidewalk, curb cut, it's going to expect me to enter some of that and so on. So because we checked right away, we'll start with that numbered tab, but we're going to look at all 3. So for right of way, the available detail to you to record. Notice nothing is a red star. Because again, no required fields, and that's because we had to make this record type one size fits all. And if we require stuff in right away and it's not a right away application, then what? Right? So, okay, so you have the option to record if plans were submitted, if it's placing new facilities in the right of way, or if you're repairing, maintaining existing facilities. You can record the type of right of way, construction, encroachment, event, other, road closure, tree trimming, use, and utility. You can record who's performing the work, contractor, franchise, other, subcontractor, utility. Record whether there's insurance or indemnity on file. You can record if a security deposit's required. Bond, cash, check, credit card, or not applicable. If it's a bond, if I selected bond and security type, you would probably fill in the bond type. Is it a maintenance bond, a performance bond, sidewalk warranty? Often around the event right away type things, traffic control plan is included or required, so you could check if it was, and what warning devices will be utilized, like cones or sawhorses or whatever. Any after hour safety plan included. That is specific to kind of right away around events or street closures for events, that kind of thing. And then you just have a free text description of project field for right away. So you can add in any level of detail or other information you feel would be helpful. If the right of way is utility related, I can say if it's franchise agreement on file or not, and the name of other utilities if it's a joint project. I can also determine if it has a hook-on agreement on file, direct, indirect, or other. And the intent of the utility side of the project. Just a free text notes field, whatever you want to put or not. If the right of way is an easement, I could say the easement type, if it's a use or vacation, if it's agreement related, a notes field, a special conditions field for the easement, that can be very important, right, for easements. The from and to date and the start and end times. If it's an encroachment, from and to dates, start and end times. And then if it involves or is related to system connections to infrastructure, if it's storm sewer, sanitary sewer, there is a missing, I write this down, or I say this every time. There's a missing there's water is also there. Just missing for Marion County. So. Okay. And then any notes. Again, just a free text field. All right, so that is all the available data that you are able to record about right away. let's go ahead and look at sidewalk, curb cut, driveway and see what's available for that. So if that service area was indicated, I can record sidewalk information, sidewalk repair, the number of panels, the sidewalk feet. If it includes an ADA ramp or a parklet, curb cut, the number of curb cuts. If it's driveway, the category construction. If it's ag, commercial, industrial, residential, or other, and then the type of work for the driveway. If it's a change in access, modification to access, new access, removal, or temporary. And then all the driveway details, the driveway width or current driveway width, length, proposed width, length, turnaround type, that's free text, by the way. The current access surface, so is it asphalt, concrete, curbed, gravel, other pavers, and the proposed, the same list. And then a free text field about anything you want to put about driveways. If it's a curbed street, if the driveway requires a culvert, if so, the culvert diameter, also free text. The site distance left, site distance right, the grade and the grade percent. Okay, that's everything available to you to record about sidewalk, curb cut, driveway. Lastly, erosion and sediment. So, free text field for whatever detail. Nature of the activity. If it's commercial, highway, industrial, multifamily, residential, other single family or utilities. The construction, stormwater runoff flow to. Is it a creek, a ditch, drainage, infiltration, municipal storm, other stream? The work site area, height, all the details about that. The height, the depth, the width, the length, the total construction project area, total disturbed area, total site acreage, existing surface material, surface replacement material, and backfill material. Excavation in cubic yards, imported fill, drainage basin. That's a custom list, because obviously that's geographically determined. So for Marion County, their drainage basins are North San Em, other tributary, Pudding River, and Willamette River. Willamette? That's funny. Guess we have a typo there. Then floodplain, those are national floodplain values. If dust control is used and what type, remember I did mention that Marion County in particular has a program for dust control. If it's hillside, wetland, swell, pipe, and then what the control mechanism might be. HOA responsible, private, public. And then MS4 permit details. I cannot pretend to be an expert at this. Originally, we collected for reporting purposes, agencies only needed to know if the site was between 1 to 5 acres or greater than 5. We have recently received a fairly extensive enhancement request around MS4. So you will see that particular area. We call this application specific information, all of these tabs, these numbered tabs. We call it ASI for short. You'll see that ASI group, that area of information, grow significantly in months to come around that enhancement request. We did accept and approve the enhancement request. So we'll be adding some new detail and information. I guess there are just new requirements that agencies have to report on around some of that. And so we will provide application specific fields for you to record the required information. Okay, so those are the 4 numbered tabs. Again, by design for Public Works in particular, the permit report is scripted, that when it goes to issue the permit and generate the permit report, it looks at first at the O1 tab to see what service areas were checkboxed. And then it goes and pulls the information, only the things that you filled in, that is, from tabs 2, 3, and 4, based on whatever the checkbox was. So For this permit, for example, we checkbox right away on the O1 tab. So the permit report is scripted to go pull anything we filled in on the O3 tab and include it in the permit. So the permit is dynamically created based on that setup. So it is imperative that you use it accordingly. Okay, so let's get down into fees and workflow. So fees, just so you know, fees do not automate on Public Works records. You have to manually add them. You go to the fee tab, hit the add button. We configure your fees for you. So you add the fees accordingly. These are Marion County's fees. These are all the things that they charge for, their rates, and so on, right? So there you go on that. I'm just going to cancel out this screen. And then, of course, you take payment. You take payment at intake or you take it at issuance, whatever, that's totally up to you. We've trained on fees and payments and things like that. Evaluation is not really a part of Public Works, but if for some reason that information is helpful for you to record, you can certainly do, like for reporting or anything, you could certainly do so. The calculator doesn't apply at all. The contractor valuation could be something you might want to record, kind of for the record, I guess. Okay. Workflow though, is where we're headed. So when I create the new application in Public Works, very, very similar, like I said, to building. We start with application intake. Remember, these are the high-level required tasks that make up the Public Works application lifecycle or the permit lifecycle. I bring it in, that's intake. We require some level of review. These are the 5 work groups available for designated plan review in Public Works. There's the Public Works Development Review, an engineering review, and a transportation review, building and planning if they need to participate in reviewing the project. I'm gonna maybe cut you off at the pass here if you're thinking it already. We do not rename the review tasks. They're not customizable. So don't get too wrapped around the axle of the naming convention of these: Public Works Development, Engineering, Transportation. Just note that they represent a work group, whatever work group, frankly, you decide. So for instance, we have some agencies on the building side and on the Public Works side that include a power and light review. They need to have power and light review some things, or water and light, excuse me. Or yeah, water and light, power and light. I think there's water and light is what it is. And they'll use like the engineering review for the water and light work group. We don't care what you use. It just, the only important piece is who you assign it to. That's what makes it work, right? So if engineering review is not really what you wanted to have called that, but you're assigning it to Jessica, then you've assigned it to Jessica, and Jessica knows she has a review to do on this project, whatever her review type might actually be called. So I don't want you to get kind of too buried in that, but hopefully, kind of generally speaking, these are fairly representative of the different work groups. Do all of them have to review on a project? Absolutely not. You decide who needs to review or who does not need to review based on the scope of work or the application type. So maybe on right away, only Public Works Development has to ever review and nobody else ever has to review. Great. Keep it short and sweet, right? Then then you have an additional review. By the way, this is a newer enhancement as well. We had a lot of agencies that just have other external review groups that need to participate in their defined process. And I mean, you know, like they're a consistent player, for instance, in their plan review process. And so, and we can't customize workflows, very complex in the way it is scripted and designed. So customizing isn't really an option. You know, so we added this generic additional review task, and you can assign it to whoever the heck you want. So if you have some sort of external work group you want to, or need to include in the review process, you can use the additional review task to do that. Once, and by the way, multiple people can be assigned. So I can assign somebody to public works development, and I can assign a different person to do the transportation review, and then a different person to do the additional review. All of those reviews can, technically speaking, be done concurrently, meaning at the same time. Separately, but at the same time. And so they will all be open tasks. We'll show you momentarily. Once anybody who's been designated for plan review, once everybody has signed off with an approval, the workflow will advance to completeness. You can see that towards the bottom of the screen. Completeness is just an administrative task that allows the permit tech or the front counter person or whomever might be the person responsible to kind of get the plans collated, make sure they're stamped and approved and, you know, marked up, blah, blah, blah. Everything's ready for issuance. Add the fees or add any additional fees or whatever the case might be. Any fees that still need to be paid, make sure they get added to the record and invoice available for payment. Once they pay, or whatever your requirements are for issuance, then you issue it. Can you scroll down a hair, Krista? The customer will get their issued permit provided to them. And the inspection process task is just a placeholder task. Inspections are not scheduled in the workflow tab. They are scheduled instead on the inspections tab. They're either self-scheduled by the customer, scheduled by your staff, or a combination of both. And then the record closes out or finals. So let's go ahead and kick off the workflow. We're going to go to application intake. And we've already trained on workflow, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time in defining the results of the different task results. So in the new status dropdown for app intake, I can ask for additional information, same as I can on any record type in all of Acela. If they have not met intake requirements, ask them for the additional information. It will send an automated email to the applicant of record, and you'll indicate in the comment field what you need, because that will become the body of the email. Once you receive it, you receive it. We got the idea there. Now, straight out of the gate in Public Works is unique. They're the only module that has a denied option. So if they apply for something right out of the gate, you have the option to deny it right out of the gate for whatever reasons. We did learn from Public Works. That was added probably 2 years ago. That's new-ish. We did hear, forgive me, tickle. We did hear that Public Works could deny something right away. Sorry, still there. Forgive me. Obviously things expire. Permit, can you scroll down there, Krista? Can't see under your mouse. There you go. Obviously you can issue the permit right out of intake. So if it does not require any level of plan review, it's an over-the-counter. No, let me clarify that. If it's an over-the-counter review, it still requires plan review. So you still want to make it ready for plan review. Even if you did the review over the counter and you're going to sign it off like all in a 5-minute setting, that's okay. But still record that you did plan review, even if it was over the counter plan review. Otherwise, in our reporting, you will not get credit for the over the counter plan review. But you can issue things that legitimately don't require any level of review. You can issue right out of intake, or I can make it ready for plan review because it does require plan review, or I can make it ready to issue Ready to issue jumps it to down to completeness. So no, it didn't require plan review, but I still need a pause before I actually issue the permit. Maybe fees, you need to still collect fees. So completeness is your task, your kind of your last, not your last chance, legitimately speaking, but kind of your last big opportunity to collect fees before you issue the permit. Any type of fees, added plan review fees, you know, whatever the case might be. Void and withdrawn. Void would be if you made an error creating this application to begin with as an agency, you created the application in error. Void is only available at intake. And so you would simply void the application. Withdrawn is available on every task throughout the workflow, top to bottom, because the customer can withdraw at any point in the process. That's the customer withdrawing. Okay, we're going to follow the kind of the typical path, ready for plan review. We are going to save that. It is going to bring up something called parallel tasks, which is all of your plan review tasks. You now have to make your decision, a right-of-way application for street construction. Who needs to review that? Who needs to approve it? Don't, you know, review could be approving or deny, simple approval or denial. Doesn't have to be literally unrolling a set of plans and marking them up and whatever. Review is also encompasses just the approval or denial process or signature processes or whatever the case might be, right? So in this case, we'll say we just need Public Works Development. This is kind of a slam dunk. So there's a select all button at the top. See the blank box? Can select all or deselect all by toggling that. So just for quick and easy. Whatever you select here, you save. And that is now going to be the task. We'll minimize this task. And can we close the up next? Just so we, yeah, there, kind of clean our screen up. We were showing you that just so we could talk about it. However, this is kind of the cleanest view. And in fact, you don't even have to see the completed section. You can minimize the completed section if you want to, because if you just need to see the in progress, the active task, clean, you know, as clean as possible, if that's your preference, then you can do that. So we're going to open the Public Works Development. We need to assign it. Assignment in Acela is key. Even if the same one person is your plan reviewer, every project, every day, if it's only ever going to be Claire, great. Doesn't matter, still need to assign it. And the reason that is because all of the reporting keys off of things that are assigned to people. So we can only age things if once it's assigned. So we can see how long Claire's had it once it's assigned to Claire. This is Marion County, so I guess we're gonna have to pick. Oh, you can pick yourself, I guess. Chris is gonna assign it to herself. And she's gonna save that assignment. She assigned it to herself. Notice that, oops. Let me go back there really quick, Krista. We hit the assign button. That's how you sign. At the bottom, there's a due date. You can elect to use this to actually manage things by a due date or even just an ideal due date, like a goal date, maybe be a better thing to call it. You can use this field if you would like to try to set, you know, goals or timelines or literal due dates. Maybe if something's written into your local code or ordinance, that you have 5 days from the date of application, you know, well, then you have 5 days, maybe set a 5-day due, 5 business days, you know, on the due date. When you assign something, you have the opportunity to edit the due date, if that's meaningful to you. Otherwise, it defaults to a day. If you're not going to use it, don't worry about it. You don't have to mess with it. You can look at things though by due date, which we'll look at in just a moment. And like I was mentioning just with Claire's my example here, in this case now Krista's assigned, I can start to look at things like maybe if I'm a manager or whatnot, or even just the director or whomever, I can start to see how many plan reviews has Claire done or Krista done. Once things are assigned, it's like everything kicks in. I can start measuring things. I can see how long things took to get completed. I can see how many. I can quantify things. How many has Claire done versus how many has Rebecca done? I can start to see, even if it's the same person, because some of your smaller agencies, I hear a lot of small agencies say, Kelly, it's always Stacy. She's our plans examiner. She's the only plans examiner we have. So it's just extra steps to click and sign everything to Stacy when we know it's always Stacy. Well, you lose a lot of kind of robust reporting if you elect to not assign things. You lose a lot of trackability because things only kind of hit the tracking path once they get assigned, and they get assigned on a certain date. Notice the assigned date is kind of there in the middle right. Down a little bit. There, right there. So the assigned date, everything, things kind of kick off. And so a lot of the tracking mechanisms and everything revolve highly around assignment. So just quickly, because we assigned this review to Krista, we're going to go to the Launchpad. We're going to open the My Tasks page very, very quickly. Hopefully you're in pub or poop. This might not work. This might be the error. Oh, there it is. Hallelujah. Well, there's the workflow task for that. There is a workflow task. So these are the 4 assignment areas in Acela. Period. You can assign workflow tasks, you can assign inspections, you can assign electronic documents that need somebody's review or attention, and you can assign activities, which are little administrative things like sending an email, writing a letter, scheduling a meeting, blah, 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 blah. So activities are those kinds. You can track those as well. They can be assigned. Self-assigned, you can use them as ticklers kind of to remind you to do things into the future. Or you can assign them to other people in your team that might be responsible for doing those kinds of things. So 4 assignment areas. We're currently on the workflow task. The filter drop down at the top of the page. You have to assign a filter. So let's decide, what do we want to look at? Do we want to look at, so any filter preceded with the word my is about the logged in user. Krista's the logged in user. So she can say, show me my active tasks. She should see that same review because it was assigned to her. Let's look at some of the other filters. My active tasks, all modules. So if Krista had been assigned anything in building or planning or public works, she would see that all here. Of course, we're trainers. We don't have a lot of things assigned to us, especially in Marion County. I don't want to look at things that are assigned to me. I just want to look at all the active assigned public works development review tasks. That's the second filter. I should see that. I should see that. I mean, we're seeing the same item, but that's why I'm picking these filters so I can show you that it starts to develop a list. Let's look at unassigned public works plan reviews at the very bottom. Uh-oh. I feel like our list is going to be big. This is Marion County. Really big? Maybe it's going to be really big. I don't know. I want to see the list though, because then I want to show you, you can sort things. But there it is. Okay, so we got 3 pages. We got 24, showing 1 through 10 of 24. Pages 1 of 3 at the bottom. Remember, any list page in Acela that has a menu button, you can hit the menu button drop down and expand the list. Acela is terrible about using available page space. And so here's 1 through 24. These are all unassigned for whatever reasons. And I can sort them by any piece of information of the column headers. Remember that due date? If you're using due date, boy, that's a great one to sort by, because you want to tackle the things that are oldest. So you could do ascending or descending. So the oldest item on here is July 9th of 21. There is a Public Works Development Review that is not assigned. Now, there might be a reason why they didn't assign it. The record is in app accepted in review. If I kind of scroll that row over to the right, I could read a variety of pieces of information about that record. I can sort by the assigned date. That's a different date. The date I assigned it to Claire versus the date it was due are two totally different dates. So you can look at how old things are. Of course, in this case, nothing is assigned. There's no assigned to staff. So the assigned date is just defaulted to the date probably the record was created or the task was added to the record. I can sort by address. I can sort by record number. I could sort by status. You get the idea. My task page is key to managing your day-to-day work in Acela. The filter you select at the top defines what you're going to see. All right, let's jump back into our record. I just wanted to show you that the power as you assign things, how they translate into your use of the task list to run your day. You know, what things do you have to look at in Acela if you're a plans examiner? Where do you even begin? How do you know what's even waiting for you if you're a plans examiner? From building, planning, public works, if you're a plans examiner, you do plan review on building projects for public works on the building records, and maybe you also do plan review on plan review on public works applications. So you wear two hats. How do you know what's been assigned to you in the two separate modules? The way you know is by making sure things get assigned by permit tech or front office staff, or those staff that are coordinating intake and permits and applications. And then you use the task list to manage your day. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and plan review this. Krista was assigned. She saw it on her task list. She pulled the physical plans out of the bin. She unrolled them. She did plan review, whatever. This is a right away. She needs to result it. So we're going to hit the new status button and she can result it. Now, as a plans examiner, she feels like she doesn't have enough information to perform a plan review. She can again ask for more information. If she reviewed it and it's approved, great. If she reviewed it and it's approved with conditions, meaning upon approval, there will be these requirements. You either need to build it a certain way to a certain design standard. It needs to be made out of this material, has to be asphalt, has to have a culvert. The culvert has to be 24 inches wide. The material has to be 8 inches deep. The driveway has to be 22 feet wide, blah, blah, blah. All those things in public works translate into conditions. I am approving your application to build a new driveway, but it has to be built like this. Those are conditions. So that's a real important emphasis for Public Works module. If it's a simple approval, like this is a right-of-way application, maybe there aren't conditions, but typically there still are. Even a right-of-way approval says, okay, if it's a right-of-way event, you have to do these things. If it's a right-of-way utility, you have to call 611 or 811 or whatever it is, call before you dig, blah, blah, blah. There's often still conditions, even on the slam dunk kind of approval stuff, right? If it's denied, if it's an application for a right of way and they want to block a street during traffic rush hour, and no way, not going to happen, or, whatever. Not required. So for instance, if this review task was assigned to Krista, she went and she looked at whatever the application was and she's like, I don't need to review this. Public Works Development doesn't need to review this. Maybe she was added to the record. This review was added to the record in error. Then you just sign it off as not required. Nothing fancy has to happen. Nobody has to go back and fix everything. You just sign it off as not required. If you need an actual material revision of a plan, so that's different than additional information. Additional info is like exactly what it says. I just need I need a copy of your safety plan or what have you. Revisions is the plans that you submitted are not approvable as submitted. I need you to submit a newly revised set of plans. And this is what needs to be revised. That's a revision. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do approve with conditions. Because 99% of the time in Public Works, because of the way Public Works is kind of how it works, is there will be conditions. You have to build it a certain way. There's certain rules around like right-of-way event, or if it's right-of-way utility, you need to reach out to the power company or the water company or, you know, whatever. There are often things you guys have, regulations, requirements, standards, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. Now it says because I said approve with conditions, it's saying a comment is required. Well, if there's a condition, tell us what it is. You're not going to tell us what it is right here. You are going to do something called C, conditions of approval. So at any point you say approved with conditions, you are going to put in the comment box requirement here, C, conditions of approval. You can elect to email at any point in time the applicant of record this information. You are approving the plan review with approve with conditions, and they'll receive the comment that says see conditions of approval. An email, as soon as you check box the applicant, an email will be sent to the applicant of record with this information included. You can also elect to CC notify anybody internally. Maybe you need to notify the building official, or maybe you need to notify somebody in Public Works, or an external recipient like the Water and Light Company or whoever. I would strongly, I don't spend a ton of time on it here in the Public Works focus training, but I would strongly encourage you to really leverage workflow email notification to save yourself yards of back and forth and time. Not only with your coworkers and teammates internally, because now you're documenting that you sent them something versus walking a piece of paper to their inbox. You're actually documenting it for the permanent record that you CC notified them of something, or that you CC notified an external recipient like the Water and Light Board or company or whatever. You kind of gives you documentation that these things happened. It will track all these emails, and it will, by the way, record this email in the communications tab on the record. Any email that you send out of workflow will be retained in the communications tab on the record. Actually, any email you send out of this record at all will be retained on the communications tab for documentation purposes. So you'll be able to look at these emails for years to come. All right, we're going to go ahead and say save, and then we're going to talk about conditions of approval, which is the last piece. And we have just a few minutes, so I'll try to be lickety split. All right, Krista is going to get an email. She checkboxed that she wanted the applicant of record to be sent an email that their plan review had been approved with conditions, and with the note that said see conditions of approval. She put herself as the applicant email just so we could show you the email that the applicant receives. From Marion County, obviously it would come from Estacada or Warrenton or Westland or whomever. It says, this is the record number, this is the address. Obviously there's no address because this is Public Works record, right? It was just a parcel, so just a note. It's Public Works tracking record, it's in review. The description of work is right away for street construction, replacement of water main. The Public Works Development Review has been approved with conditions, and the comment says see conditions of approval. See conditions of approval. It says if you have questions, contact whatever staff person processed that status result. So if if a permit tech processed that status result or the plans examiner processed it. I can tell you if for any reason the permit tech is doing data entry on your behalf, or any other administrative personnel is doing data entry on your behalf as a plans examiner or as an inspector, just as a side note, they need to make sure they change the name to you. They are not certified to be an inspector. They are not certified to be plans examiners. When they result the task, they need to make sure they change the action by to you, to your name, to the inspector's name, to whatever. If they leave it defaulted to them as an administrative person, they're not certified to do plan reviews and inspections and whatnot. That can cause some audit issues ultimately. So if any admin people are doing entry on your behalf, for any of you who can guide them accordingly, they need to make sure and record the plans examiner or the inspector or whatever would be appropriate as the person doing the decision making. So if you have questions, it'll say, please contact whoever did the update. It will include their phone number based on your user profile and that email that is included in your user profile. And that's because this email cannot be replied to. Notice it says no reply at the top. It can't be replied to. And so they need some way to get back in touch with you. And that contact information is included in your signature block. Lastly is the deep link. Your record is available online for tracking by clicking here. That link is the same link I mentioned to you that you can copy and paste out of the description of work. We talked about that briefly. This is the same link. It's called a deep link. This link is unique to their record number, and if they click it, it will take them to their record online, and they can see the conditions of approval like you told them to. Let's look at conditions of approval. Last piece here, conditions of approval is a separate tab on the record. At any point in time when you're doing a plan review as a plans examiner in the public works setting, when you do a plan review and you approve it, you need to. Part 2 is not only sign off the plan review, but the other part is you need to go and put in a condition of approval. They go together in public works. If I'm doing a plan review, I need to put a condition of approval when I'm done. So the way to add a condition of approval is to hit the new button. Select the condition group, conditions of approval again. I know that seems redundant, but that's how it works. Thank you, Estella. Submit. Then I have to say what flavor of condition of approval. Remember, any list that has a menu button, you can expand the list. Krista just showed you that. Public Works. I'm in Public Works, so the condition of approval will be Public Works. However, just so you know, on the plan review, remember, there was a building review option if building needs to review a Public Works application for any reason, and there was a planning review. So when building does a review on a Public Works application, potentially, if they need to add any sort of conditions of approval, their type would be building. Right? They can only suggest or recommend conditions for their conditions of their approval, conditions for final related to their whatever their capacity is, right? If they're reviewing on behalf of building, then it's a building requirement, not a Public Works requirement. So I'm Public Works plans examiner, Claire, and so I'm going to, put a Public Works COA onto this record. So select. All this does is add a text block. So all we just did, we hit new, we said condition of approval, and then we had to say what work group it was for. We selected Public Works. All it does is add a text block to the record. To the permit, whatever you enter here will be directly printed in the permit report. Conditions of approval for Public Works are the meat and potatoes of your permit. They are your opportunity to customize the permit, essentially. They are your opportunity to say, exactly how the driveway needs to be built. The width, the length, the dimensions, the turnaround, whatever it is that you are approving or allowing them to do should be indicated here in the COA. It's what we call these. So the way to add that approval language is to go to the actions button and open this text block and fill it in. So the top half stays as is. That's all defaulted. So we don't change any of that, everything stays as it is. We fill in the text box at the bottom. Now, this is where I would say, so I'm Claire, I'm the Public Works Plans Examiner or the Development Review person. I need to say what my conditions for approval are. So I am approving you to do this right-of-way permit, but we have some requirements of right-of-way permits. So we strongly invite you to provide us, there's a submittal that we provided to you for this with the agenda email yesterday, to provide us with something called standard comments. So you have the option to build a library of comments that relate to your requirements, your guidance, your rules, whatever you want to call it, your design standards, your building standards, your construction standards. We've heard them called all kinds of things. So we're going to go into Marion County. We're going to hit their standard comment. We're going to open their standard comment library. Can you, Max? Yeah. And on the left, we're going to select jurisdiction, because any standard comments we configure for you will go under jurisdiction. I know you'll be tempted to say comment group public works, but don't. That's different. Comment group is always jurisdiction. And then we do a breakdown of the type. So access, Marion County. Let's look at their access standard comments. These are what Marion County gave us for their access requirements. So for access for commercial width, access width for commercial use is not to exceed the following per Marion County Engineering Standard Table 6. In the urban area, 1-way, 2-way, blah, blah, blah. In the rural area, access for culvert, when a culvert is required. A culvert is required and is to be 12 inches in diameter at minimum. Approved culvert materials per Marion County Engineering Standards, section VA3R concrete. Blah, blah. You get the idea here. They take a little bit of time on the front end, but once we build this library for you, then all you have to do is send us any updates. You know, as things go, as you maybe revise your code or revise your ordinance or your rules or whatever, then you just would send in a help desk ticket for us to update things. Access like field width. Access width for field use is not to exceed 24, what's that, feet? I can never remember, feet or inches. Access for fire emergency only. Gate required. When a gate's required. When it's a private easement. When it's residential width. You can kind of go down the left here in the document ID. We try to name the document ID. I mean, you can see they have to be very short and sweet, but we try to name them in a way that is meaningful so that you know which ones to pick. Permanent driveway closure special provisions. When a driveway is required to be permanently closed, this is what you have to do in Marion County. That's just for access. So then when we go to the type up there, can we hit that again, Krista? And annual blanket. They have annual blanket permits. Can you hit that one? Look at these. Now, some of them are really, really long. And there's a minimum number, there's a max characters for us on how long these can be. So sometimes they have to be multiple parts. Notice the annual lignin, again, not pronouncing it right, probably. There's a part 1 and a part 2, because that standard comment that Marion County provided us to configure was long, very long. So it had to be configured in 2 parts. So whenever they add this one, they have to add both parts. You see the annual, the utility one, the city one at the top, the sub annual blanket permit, public utility company special provisions. I mean, they're very detailed. They have code citations, phone numbers, hyperlinks, measurements, lengths, materials, right? For water, they do, I guess, a lot of these annual blanket permits. Scroll back up. Let's hit one more and then we'll call it good because I'm a few minutes over here. Scroll back up to the right. I want to hit another group real quick. Event. So right away event. Those J1s are for building. They're not for public works. So when it's right away event, if it's bike oriented event, there's a part 1, 2, and 3. Those are all the rules around right away for bike events. Signage, warning signs, flaggers. You get the idea. General provisions. So event for general provisions, that's that center one. This permit accepted and agreed by the applicant subject to the requirements and conditions listed herein. So let's just go ahead and pick like event general provision. All we're doing is clicking it. Boom. We're going to keep going here. Let's do event specific requirements. The next one. And then let's scroll all the way down to the bottom and I don't know, grab another one. Just grab part 1 of that one. Yes,
I clicked a few earlier.
Okay. All right. So then we're done. We picked all the parts that we need out of our standard comment library and we're going to close it. All of those got added in full to the COAs, to this COA, to this condition of approval. All of this will now be pulled into the permit. The permit is your document of record. It is your permanent record. So by declaring all of these things directly in the permit, you no longer have to give them eight handouts. You don't have to maybe stamp the heck. So a lot of agencies, some agencies stamp these on the plans. Some agencies give them yards of handouts, which you don't know if they kept the handout, read the handout, lost the handout, came back, maybe didn't meet the requirements, and then came back and fought with you saying nobody ever gave them the handout. You know, they file an official complaint because they already built the driveway and they didn't build it to the specs you supposedly gave them. And they say, nobody ever gave me that information. You know, all these kinds of things that can come up. And by including the conditions of approval, by folding them into the document of record, like your legal record here, then you are, you know, you're kind of creating a bulletproof situation, right? And not only that, is it gives the customer one document to keep track of, not 8 handouts, or some stuff was a handout, some stuff was stamped on the plans, and some stuff was told to them in a plan review letter, right? By folding everything logistically into the permit, it is a significant benefit, not only to the customer, but to yourself as an agency. All right, so we are now going to scroll up to the top and save our COA. And I'm so sorry I'm over. Hopefully you can stay just another 2 minutes. I'm going to just go ahead and issue the permit. So Chris, if you can go down into workflow. We're going to move quick here. We're going to go ahead and go to completeness. We're going to make it ready to issue. Because we collected all the fees. We marked up all the plans. We got everything ready to issue. They paid the fees. We're ready to go. We're going to go ahead and issue it. I want you to see the issued permit and ultimately here. Uh-oh. You didn't get a pop-up. Ah, your pop-ups are blocked again. Have to have pop-ups allowed for Acela. And it uses pop-ups extensively. So just want to make sure that you know that for your local browser that you'll be using Chrome or Edge, you need to absolutely make sure that you have star.acela.com. That's not going to let you do that. Huh. I've run into this lately. It wants like the whole website. It's probably why you're having issues. Anyway, we can figure that out later. We got like just a half a second here. We're going to go ahead and just go to the summary tab. By the way, the pop-up should have been the permit report. Her pop-ups were instantly blocked. So we're going to go into the summary tab on the record, the report drop down, and we're going to manually generate the report since we missed the pop-up. Take a minute here to generate. We did put a lot of standard comments on it. Holy cow. We put a lot, but my goodness. I want to close it and try to generate it again. Jeez whiz. Holy cow. Of course, right? As you're down to the final second here. I don't know why it's not running. I'm pretty sure it's trying to run. We put all those standard comments, but I mean still. Why don't you close out of that, Krista? Let's go back and go to the record list and just go to that last right away record. I don't know if this is a Marion County created record. They might not have generated a permit on it. You can go to documents and see. Or might not have been, they didn't put any COAs. I'm sorry, let's try a record one more time. Sorry to be flip-flopping here. Let's open our record. Oh. Well, that is a COA on it. So let's see, did they issue it? Yeah, let's go to the documents and open the permit. I can see they put a COA on it because the number at the end, by the way. That's always kind of just a helpful little clue. We're going to preview it in a pre. Huh. Marion County stage or production.
Okay, give me just a second to log in.
Darn. Sorry about this. We've had issues lately running reports in our practice environment during our training, so seems like we've run into it again, unfortunately. Chris is actually going into their production environment. To their real record, you know, their real stuff. And try to open, I don't know, access review for the pole barn. It's like right in the dead center, record 29. Oh, yeah.
This one's been issued.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And it has COAs on it. So we'll go to documents and we'll open the permit that they issued. All right, let's get that puppy open. Can't do that anymore, remember? Can you close that review pane?
It won't let me.
What's the little eyeball looking thing at the top? That little weird.
That?
No, to the right. Oh, well, there's that. Okay, at least So make it way bigger, bigger, and we'll just look at it in pieces. So you can see it'll include your header, your logo. We'll configure all of those pieces for you. It will indicate when it was issued, the project name, the description of work, and the expiration date. By the way, you set the expiration date, generally speaking. Unfortunately, we can't set expiration date configuration for each application type. It's kind of all record types. So you want to think about it kind of more generically. Set the general expiration for a year or for 2 years, but it's going to be for all application types. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be like right away expires in a year, but construction permits don't expire for 2 years. Unfortunately, we can't get to that place yet. Not until we break out different record types. It has the address information, of course, has all the people attached to the project. You can see that in the contact section. General information will say what they checked or didn't check, kind of thing. This is an annual blanket. It doesn't, Marion County isn't using service areas for annual blankets. That's why they put in their enhancement request. So this is a bummer one, but the conditions of approval, in short, you can see it folded in what they added. And they included some attachments and mailed this, emailed this, and there's everything there. So they dropped in all the standard comments related to the annual blanket permit this application was for. And it could certainly, like you're seeing here, turn the permit into multiple pages, but that's okay. You're kind of including everything together in one comprehensive permanent document, or this your permanent record, excuse me. They did pen some inspections. They did decide to make some suggestions about what inspections they want to see get scheduled on this. It will give you the inspection information to the customer if you are going to allow the customer to schedule. And then lastly, it will regurgitate any fees or anything that you collected. It will just be a listing, it doesn't function as a bill. It will just be a list of the fees that were assessed on the records. It won't be about payments or you have an outstanding balance or any of that. The permit does not double as a bill. And then there is some common language at the bottom here. You have a submittal also for this. For some of this, you have the ability to decide some information you want to appear on every permit, like call before you dig, the second item there. It is the responsibility of the applicant, utility company, contractor to locate the right of way, call before you dig. It's the law. And attention, Oregon law gives the phone number and whatnot. See conditions of approval for permit spec requirements. Start of work shall indicate the applicant accepts and approves the terms and provisions contained and attached hereto, including applicable special provisions in the Marion County design standards. Failure to comply, blah, blah, blah. That is a golden paragraph. Marion County, like I said, is really leading the way on using this module to its fullest extent. They've come up with this great paragraph here. It's kind of a little bit of their legalese to say those things included in this permit you are acknowledging by way of getting the permit. So and by the way, we can provide you with any of the Marion County language if that would be helpful for you. We are very willing to share, because they've really kind of mastered some of this. And they've been very, very willing, and I've asked them multiple times, hey, can I share some of this with this other agency or these other people, or give them some copies of your standard comments and things? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. So you have the option of some standard language that will appear on every single permit, no matter the application type. That's this language. You can customize this. You also have an option to include some standard language when the service area right of way is checked. Every time. You also have the option of providing some standard language every time the erosion sediment control service area is checked. And lastly, you also have the option of some standard language anytime the sidewalk, driveway, curb cut box is checked. So you can get pretty in-depth about customizing your permit report to include standard language that applies to everything, standard language that applies just when right-of-way is checked, standard language that applies just when erosion is checked, or just when driveway curb cut is checked. Now, if all three of those are checked, it will include the standard language for all three. If you gave us standard language. Now, it's a lot of information, you guys. You have very graciously stayed over. I deeply appreciate and value your time. I apologize. I just really want to make sure you get all of the information you need to really maximize usage of this module. We recognize, again, it's a ton of information. As you start using the module, you might find that you're not ready to give us standard comments yet for go live. You might not really feel like you kind of have yourself, you know, that you don't understand it quite well enough to give us standard comments yet, or to give us the standard language options like Krista's displaying right here. You just might not feel expert enough right at your go live to provide us with those submittals yet. And so you can defer on those. I want you to know that. You can say, you know what, we need to get like a month or two under our belt. And then I think we'll know it a little bit better to make better decisions about what standard comments and what kind of standard permit language might serve us best. However, if you already kind of know some of these things, I mean, just even the basics like call before you dig, that's a doozy. That's a big one right there. Or you already have like the standards and guidelines kind of document that maybe you have a spreadsheet or a Word document and you find that you copy and paste from it when you're writing up a plan review letter. Guess what? Those are your standard comments then. If you already have some sort of, you know, document you're copying, pasting pieces off of, you know, standard terminology, or not terminology, standard language or snippets of code or those kinds of things, do you already kind of have stuff like that that you're using to do your day-to-day work? That those immediately translate into standard comments, if that helps you kind of get your head around those a little bit. I am going to open it while I am late. I am going to open it for questions. I still want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions you might have. Hi there. You can put something in the chat too. If you don't have microphone capability, you can put it in the chat. If you don't have a question, you can go ahead and close and leave the meeting if you need to get somewhere else. And for those of you who are going to cut out of the meeting, thank you again for your extended time. Truly appreciate it.
You did have a question.
Okay.
Hi, Kelly. I had a question. If we, first of all, super helpful. Thank you. If we have a building module already up and running with both planning and building staff set up with user accounts, do those user accounts sort of transfer to the Public Works module so we could assign planners for review if they already are users? Does that, even though we don't have a planning module?
Yes, excellent question. Users is a big one, especially for you guys, because you're already up and going. The other agencies on the call today are brand new. They haven't even started with e-permitting yet. But for you guys in particular, yes, any of the existing users will be available to you to make assignments to, like for plan review or what have you. However, as you add your, if they need access to your module, to the Public Works module, you're going to have to still include them in your user submittal so that we give them access to the Public Works side of the house. Does that make sense?
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, for instance, Jim, he's a building official. He's gonna need, maybe he'll need a read-only access minimally to Public Works, or maybe he needs to have more than read-only. He needs to be a reviewer, for instance, just example. In that case, then yes, he's an existing user, but you'll still have to include him in your user submittal to us and ask us to also give him Public Works access. And how much access?
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great question.
Don't forget to
Anybody
stop
else?
recording.
Anybody else have any questions?